two dicks. Wow.
Yeah! Here we go! Here we go! Here we go!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast.
And having to go, yeah, but he did kind of do this.
What I'm hearing is you just want Tom Brady dead. Like, that's all I'm hearing at this point. You just want Brady
Well,
dead.
not anymore. He's retired now, so I'm good with that. I don't want him calling games anymore because, holy hell, he's hard to listen to.
Enough angry and, depressing from myself. Sterling, thank you for being able to sit there as my therapist for this episode.
Start the game already!
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Football Talk podcast. Brendan and Sterling coming at you for yet another week of football, and a little bit later than we would have wanted to record this, but busy weekends sometimes means that things can't ultimately get planned out on time. But, buddy, how you doing?
I'm doing good, and I mean, hey, at least we're still able to be here doing one. If it wasn't a long weekend, then this would have been one of our bye weeks, essentially, where we just skip it.
Yeah, it is busy times for both of us here at this time of the year.
Those of you that know we're in Canada know that it's, Thanksgiving long weekend in Canada, so a lot of stuff with family. I know you were calling a lot of games this weekend because often there's, a lot of youth tournaments and things like that go on the long weekends, so.
Yep. 7 games called this weekend. Voice starting to recover at this point, but we're ready to go. And obviously a lot of things that we could come out and talk about at the start of things here, but one of the bit of breaking news that happened today was the Tennessee Titans are moving on from head coach Brian Callahan, which is something I think both of us thought was pretty likely to happen, especially, like this year. But I don't think either of us would have pegged him to be the first head coach fired this year.
No, and we didn't at the start of the year, because we're both very much on board with the, if you're going to take a quarterback really early and he's going to be your starter, you kind of don't go away from that head coach even if you're having a bad year, because you don't want to reset that learning curve. We were more looking at like Mike McDaniels and Brian Daboll, who,
yep.
Anybody who watched that Thursday nighter against the Eagles, you saw Brian Daboll looking into Jackson Dart's eyes and go like, you could just see him thinking, "You just saved my job. Thank you so much." Like, it looked like he wanted to kiss him.
Oh, he was probably like one camera shift away from just giving him a big old kiss on the lips. Like it was one of those things where I think coming into the year, I sat back and I thought Daboll was probably going to be the first guy out, just because I didn't know if Jackson Dart was going to get a lot of playing time at the start of the year. It was kind of just one of those up and down things where I said at the start of the year, I was like, it's going to be either in the really early stages of the season or it's going to be in the really late stages of the season, and it's not going to be in between this. Like I think we both looked at it when Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston aren't getting all the starts this year, and it just so happened to be that Russell Wilson was so incredibly bad at football that Jackson Dart had to get in. But we'll talk about the Giants a little bit more, because I know both of us are sitting back watching this Giants team, and there's things that we will want to talk about with this team and this organization. But yeah, man, if you have watched any of the games that the Tennessee Titans have played, it has been rough. It has been bad football to watch. Like, when your first overall pick quarterback, franchise guy that you're hoping to be that guy, walks out after 4 weeks of the season and goes, "We're ass." Like, straight up, we ass.
Yeah.
That's a problem. And, I said it at the beginning of the year. I didn't think the Titans were going to be the worst team in that division, but I did think they were going to be a bottom 5 team. And it is such a thing where you just look at the Tennessee Titans and go, who do they have on offense? It's going, okay, they drafted a couple of old linemen the last couple of years, so they're starting to build that up, and they're going to start to improve that. which is good. You want to have some decent old linemen. But then you look at the running back game, you have Tony Pollard, who I think both of us agree isn't an elite back. He's not a great back. He's just fine. Like he's someone that
Yeah.
could be on any single team in the NFL and get you a couple of yards when you need it.
Yeah, he's more of like a running back that you would throw into an RB room as a rotation,
Yeah.
with a 1-2, and he would be the 2 of that 1-2 for most teams around the league, I think. It's just the Titans were in such a rough spot. They didn't have anything. Like you said, they've drafted some O linemen, which was good that to have when you draft that quarterback first overall. They drafted themselves a tight end this year as well, who is, it takes time for some of those young tight ends if you're not coming out of where is it, Iowa? Like you're not going to be a superstar right away. So
Even then, some of the
like,
Iowa tight ends still take a second to kind
it,
of get going.
well, especially on a team that has these growing issues. And it's not like they had an elite coach to begin with. Brian Callahan was not anything terribly special. He more one of those just game manager, team manager type of head coaches.
Yeah, it was one of those things where Brian Callahan ultimately came over as the offensive coordinator from the Bengals. And again, most people forget that it was Taylor calling the plays in
Mhm.
Cincinnati and not Brian Callahan, but it was, oh, this guy is working with our quarterback and he's running this offense when the head coach is off doing other things, that he's going to come in and kind of revolutionize this team. And like I just continue to sit back and go, I don't I've always stated that I think, like, again, like the last few years I've been very adamant that the only way you're going to succeed in this league and have continuous success is if you have an offensive minded coach who calls the plays with a young quarterback that you can grow and develop with for years and years and years. And that's great that Tennessee hired an offensive minded coach, but the problem is this guy didn't have a history of calling plays. I go back to
No.
the Bears when they hired Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy was not the top candidate that year, but he was this young offensive minded guy coming into work with Justin Fields, or not Justin Fields, Mitch Trubisky. It was kind
Mhm.
of like, oh, we're going to have this situation, hoping to have a similar situation with what the Rams had with Sean McVay. The difference between Nagy and Sean McVay is Sean McVay had been an experienced play caller in the NFL, while Nagy, yes, he was the offensive coordinator for a couple of seasons for the Kansas City Chiefs, but he didn't call plays for the Chiefs or didn't call plays on a regular enough basis to where it mattered. And that's kind of a similar situation with Brian Callahan, of where he didn't call plays on a regular enough basis to the point where he built up that muscle memory of going, I know what to do in these situations. I know the ebbs and flows of a game and how to call it. And when you have a coach that hasn't done that before, it makes it kind of tricky.
Yeah, and that's exactly the issue they were having. We said that before they brought him in that they should be looking for something more long term. It felt like a stopgap head coach. Like they lost Mike Vrabel, and then they were just like, who can we get to fill this role until we find our guy? Problem is, they also fell into their potential franchise quarterback during that holdover period. And so this is going to make it really difficult for Cam Ward going forward. Luckily, Cam Ward seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders. He seems like he has the right mentality to be a franchise guy. And so the Titans, they could right this ship. But unfortunately, it's probably not going to be till next year because there aren't a lot of candidates really available right now that you could go out and grab that are just sitting on their couch that, oh yeah, we'll bring him in. Like, the only one that comes to mind who isn't an offensive minded anyway was all the rumors around, is UNC going to buy out Bill Belichick? And so does Belichick just jump right back to the NFL to Tennessee? But you
Why
and I
would he
have
want to
discussed
go
it.
that?
No, exactly. We've discussed at length where we think he's going to go. We think he's going to eventually be the Dallas Cowboys head coach. I don't see why he would give up on UNC to go to Tennessee because that is not a step up.
Yeah. Well, and with this early into the season, because we are in week 6 of the NFL, so only 11 more weeks of NFL football, which is kind of depressing to already think about. But yeah, it is one of those things where Brian Callahan was hired to be this team's coach. They have Will Levis going into year number 2, and it's okay, like there's not a lot there. They end
Hmm.
up having the first overall pick, and you just look at this team and you go, their hands are kind of tied. Like they needed to draft Cam Ward because he was the best quarterback in this draft class, in a quarterback draft class that most people, including myself, looked at and went, there isn't really a lot. Now, Cam Ward has looked okay. Jackson Dart, in the 3 starts that he's had, now he's gotten 2 wins, but you're watching him still kind of learn and process the NFL. Jackson Dart has without a doubt been the best rookie quarterback so far this year, but even then you're not going to sit back and go like, oh, he's instantly the offensive rookie of the year at this point type situation. But
No.
you put Cam Ward into an offense with Calvin Ridley, who is older and just frankly just doesn't seem all that interested. Eli Ayamaner, who was, I think, a 6th round pick in this last draft. That's a tough thing. Van Jefferson, Tyler Lockett coming over. He's considered a second string on this team. And so
Hmm.
that just goes to show that like he isn't really that top level guy. And obviously, if you're the Titans, you just have an interim coach for the rest of the season. You say, hey, we're going to bite the bullet. We're going to see where ultimately we fall. And if we have a top 3 pick, or hell, even if we have the number 1 pick, we'll kind of figure it out at that point,
Hmm.
and we'll see what our new head coach wants to do, because I'm not necessarily ruling out the possibility that, the new head coach that comes in goes, I don't want to be tied to something like this, and we just see
Yep.
them do a Arizona Cardinals situation. Now that was a little bit different of where it was Josh Rosen picked 10th overall and not first overall, but
Yeah.
you know, uh, you just never know with what's happening. But yeah, it's not a shock, but it's also kind of a little bit of a shock of going like, you're really kind of doing this soon.
Right. Yeah. Not a shock, more of a disappointment, I would say. It's like
Yeah.
it just close out the season and fire him. That's not a great play, I suppose. This gives them the chance, I guess, to roll the dice, so to speak. They could go and find an interim coach, if they go external on it and be like, hey, you are an offensive minded guy. You've been known as a play caller. Show us what you got. Like if you do well enough that we don't have a top 10 pick, then maybe you get the job. Something like that. But that's they're damned if they do, damned if they don't in this point, because you look at how bad they are, and you almost do want a top 3 pick so you can get another big O lineman, or even trade out of one of those spots to get more picks so that you can grab both a wide receiver and a running back in the first 3 rounds, something like that. But it's tough. Like I don't envy Titans ownership in the decisions they have to make going forward, because it's a lose-lose right now.
Well,
You're not going to win enough to get like a playoff spot or be competitive, but you also don't want to just lose out, because it doesn't look good. You lose fans, you lose revenue. They're screwed.
yeah. Obviously, you want your team to try to do as much as they possibly can and win as many games as they can. I think most Titans fans knew that this wasn't going to be an instant flick of the wrist and it's fixed. I think they knew they were still in for a long season this year, especially after what they kind of saw last year. But it is one of those things where I look at this Titans team, and you basically just bring in the interim coach. You just say, just go have fun, kid. Like you just say to Cam Ward, it doesn't matter if you throw 80 interceptions this season. Go out there, test everything. Like that would be the mentality that I have. You go out there, the rest of the season is solely for Cam Ward to just experiment. If he wants to test throwing into 4-man coverage, let him. Let him see what he can and can't do at the NFL level. And if they have, let's say, the first overall pick, and let's just say the Las Vegas Raiders, which was funny enough the team that just ultimately beat them, which we know that team is looking for a quarterback. Like, they're gonna have to be. Could we see the Raiders potentially try to make one of these trades like what we saw with the Carolina Panthers to the Chicago Bears a few years ago, where it's, we really like this quarterback at the top of the class, we're really going to go after it, we're desperate, we're going to give you an absolute boatload to move forward with it. And, you know, insert a handful of other teams here. Again, like the Cardinals. You could be talking about the Browns, the Saints. Maybe the Jets start to get a couple of wins at the end of the year, and they start to move forward. Hell, you could look at maybe the Rams with their 2 first-round picks this year. Say, hey, Matthew Stafford called it a career, and, you know, we need one of these quarterbacks, and so we kind of need to do that. Just insert a random team that could potentially try to trade for them. And yeah, honestly, I would say for the Bears, it worked out in their favor for that instance, for that trade. And that's where I could see the Tennessee Titans potentially try to move towards.
Yeah, that would be the smart move. You know, like I said, you're then accruing multiple picks across likely 2 to 3 years, where you can immediately get playmakers in place to play with Cam Ward. You know, you can get your defense started to be built up. You can improve your O-line some more. But all of this still will be second priority behind finding that new head coach. You know, they are going to be, they've got kind of a head start on everybody else now that's going to be looking for a head coach. I know they can't interview anybody, but they themselves can very much be scouting everybody. They can be watching these Buffalo Bills games and Baltimore Ravens games much closer and seeing, okay, is this OC over there the guy that we want in this position? Like, is he the guy that we're going to really push for? They've got, as you said, 11 weeks that they can effectively
scout
these coaches and make their true decision and hope for the best that coach also wants to come to your team. I'm not sure where the NFL tampering rules lie in terms of whether during the regular season a team can contact an OC and be like, hey, would you be interested? We're not starting the interview process, but is this something you'd be considering after the season? I don't know if
I think it does have to be after the official season ends, then you can start to kind of go down that process, because I know even with some of the rules now where, like, you can't even necessarily put pen to paper on a guy. You can have verbal agreements, but you can't even have the coach sign the contract until his team's season is done. And that's why I kind of was happy to see the Commanders beat the Lions in last year's playoff, because it was literally the day after, or like 2 days after, where it was Ben Johnson is announced as the Bears head coach, signing the paperwork, and boom, there we go. But I know this thought just occurred to me, is obviously the Bears were in this position last year, obviously not this early. And I said from the start of last season, like week 1, I wanted Ben Johnson as the Bears head coach. And we eventually got there. And, you know, once Eberflus was fired, I said, like, it's Ben Johnson or nothing. Titans fans should be screaming for Joe Brady. Because, like, Joe Brady is... I don't think he is as talented of an offensive mind as Ben Johnson is, because Ben Johnson is a different level mentality with the way he calls offense. And he was sought after for 3 years. Basically, the second that he became an offensive coordinator, everyone basically said, like, he is going to be a head coach in the NFL. Yeah. Joe Brady is very, very good, and he's called that offense for the Buffalo Bills. This is his now this is his now, air quotes, 3rd season as the OC for the Bills. And he's done a really good job. And if I am the Titans, I am circling Joe Brady's name and going, what do we need to do to get Joe Brady? Because as we've discussed before, the offensive-minded guru coaches don't seem to be in a high demand. They are in a high demand this year, but there's just not those next level guys. You're going to see that this is what I'm going to call this off season of the trap off season, of where you're going to see a bunch of teams who end up moving on from their head coaches, hire these really talented defensive coaches, and they're going to get a little bit of a boost here in year one. They're going to have a little bit of that hard-nosed, gritty football where it's going, oh, the defensive football is now back on the rise, and it's going, well, sure it is. When you have to draft and develop these rookie quarterbacks and you have no idea how to do it, and then you have all these offense, like I've said multiple times, if you're the Titans, you can't be that team. You can't go out there and hire a defensive-minded coach, because you're just essentially ruining Cam Ward's career at that point. It has to be Joe Brady.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we agreed at the start of the season that Joe Brady was kind of the top candidate going into next year. Like I removed Ben Johnson from the equation because Ben Johnson is the past. He's not somebody that's available or anything like that. And so looking at it going into this season, Joe Brady is that top tier, top level OC to become the next head coach that's available, that we've seen across the NFL or even at the college level. The only other one I see that could be a potential jump ship and go for another head coaching job is the Washington Commanders OC in Cliff Kingsbury. That is another very real option that I could see them going. But I agree with you. Like, the Titans brass and the fans really need to hone in and decide who it is they want. And that's where I'm like, man, if only there wasn't tampering there so that you could just call the guy and be like, what would it take for you to want to come here next year? We're not going to start talking contract or anything, but like, what do you need in terms of play style, players, things like that? Because we're not at the trade deadline yet. We can trade some guys like Calvin Ridley or Tony Pollard away for picks or for other youthful players that you're like, I really like this guy on this team, and try to get some of those guys in to just sweeten the pot for somebody like a Joe Brady. But again, not really something that is permitted. And so it is just a gamble on hoping that the moves you make at the deadline, because the Titans have to be sellers.
Oh, because undoubtedly.
Like Tony Pollard, he's not your running back of the future, but he's serviceable enough. And I mean, there's one team out there that is desperately looking for a running back right now that you might be able to get a slightly better pick for a guy like Tony Pollard, because they need a running back so bad, and so there's options and things out there, places that they can move some of these guys. And I think that's what the Titans need to do. It's like, sorry, Cam, you're going to have to make do with the rookies we drafted and some of the ass players that are available. Maybe we'll call up one or two of these guys that never ended up signing contracts, and a la Joe Flacco be like, hey, you want to play for 6 weeks? That sort of thing. That's what the Titans got to do moving forward, I think.
Yeah, I look at the Titans and I look at this roster and I go, who are the guys that I could see potentially be traded from the organization? Tony Pollard, that's going to be like a 6th or 7th round pick type situation. I don't think you're going to see a high value placed on him, but a guy that you could see garner a little bit of higher value, I don't think anything more than a 3rd or a 4th, is Jeffrey Simmons. Jeffrey Simmons is a really, really solid defensive lineman, and I know, with me being the Bears fan here and constantly looking and talking about how do we improve this defensive line, Jeffrey Simmons has been a name that has been in some of these trade conversations. I'm not there with Jeffrey Simmons, but I know there could be a team out there that ultimately feels that sort of way and tries to get that certain bit of value. But yeah, it is one of those really, really interesting things of how we are going to evaluate the Tennessee Titans throughout the remaining portion of the year, just because they are a team that at this point, their season does not matter. We have only seen one interim head coach ever bring a team to the playoffs. That was Rich Bisaccia with the Raiders a couple years ago. And they immediately got bounced from the playoffs, and that is when the Bengals went on to go to the Super Bowl. Other than that, interim head coaches have almost unanimously been losing records. They might give you a boost for 1 or 2 weeks, but for the vast majority of it, you don't see them really do much. And it's
No.
basically like once you fire that coach, it's the season is pretty much over, which is why it comes as a bit of a shock that you see the Tennessee Titans do it in week 6 to basically say for their franchise quarterback in week 6 of his rookie year, who you picked number 1 overall in season number 1, after 6 weeks, saying season's done, kid.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild, but not that shocking. Like I said, we both had a feeling Brian Callahan would be out by the end of the season at the very latest. The change needed to be made. It is shocking that it comes this early, but it's fire sale time.
Yep.
Like you said, we're in week 6 right now. What is it? Week 9, I believe, is the trade deadline now, and so you got a few weeks. Start shopping those offers because, Jeffrey Simmons, Tony Pollard, I think Calvin Ridley. He somebody who's looking for a second or third string wide receiver. Like I look at my Pittsburgh Steelers, maybe that's an option for them. That there's teams out
There's
there
options
that you can shop some of these guys too. And like I said, the Chargers might be desperate enough for a running back that you might be able to get a 4th or a 5th for Tony Pollard because they need a running back so desperately. And anybody else, you're getting a 6th, maybe a 7th. Like you're not getting much, but you got the time to shop around now. I think that's what the Titans need to do. It's just start building up as many draft picks as you can and look at it. Go, look, we'll try to have a good team for you, Cam Ward, by your 4th year.
Yeah. It is one of those things where it almost kind of feels like the Tennessee Titans are on this trajectory of being like the next Carolina Panthers, of where they are just such a horrible team that they try to the only difference is that the Titans were smart enough to not try to jump up and trade a haul of picks away. So they still have a bunch of their draft assets. So they might actually be already a step ahead of the Carolina Panthers in this sense of trying to do something like that. But they're so far, like I heard Daniel Jeremiah say this, I think it was last year, where he funny enough, he was talking about the Bears in Caleb's rookie year, where he's like, they're 12 players away from being 12 players away. And with the with the Titans, it feels like they're 15 players away from being 12 players away. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just looking at that roster, there's just nothing.
No, there really isn't. And I mean, here's the real truth of it too, is that whoever they do find for the head coach, not the interim, whoever they hire for their next head coach could come in there and throughout the interview process go, I know you guys spent a 1st rounder on this kid, but he's not really what I'm looking for in a quarterback. And the Titans might find themselves in a position where they're even having to trade Cam Ward away in year 2 or year 3 for a 2nd or 3rd round pick just to try and recoup some of that and find a different way to rebuild. I could very well see this Titans team going that direction where they end up having to trade Cam Ward away. They've got some 1st round picks because they trade out, and they go out there and they go, okay, well, we're going to jump on the Jameis Winston experiment next year or someone like that. We're just going to bring in a veteran, somebody that can just hold down the fort, get us 5 to 7 wins maybe, but won't be a detriment to morale on this team or in the locker room. And somebody that we can start building a culture that we want for the future. I would not be shocked to see the Titans do something like that, just depending on who the head coach that they hire is. We've seen it before where a guy comes in and goes, that's great, he's a 1st overall pick, he does not fit the style of play that I want to run in this offense.
Yeah. Obviously, we could sit back and talk about this Titans team all day long. But another thing that ultimately came out yesterday after some of the games with a team that I know both of us have been pinning to be, pretty much after week 1, we kind of just sat back and said, this is one of the worst teams in football. And their coach is pretty much on the hottest seat in football. That's the Miami Dolphins. And I think kind of where I'm leading into this is Tua calling out Dolphins players for just straight up skipping meetings. So like this is what Tua said. I think it starts with the leadership and helping that the guys need to be there for when they're expected to be out there. We are expecting this and we are getting that. Are we not getting that? We have guys showing up to player only meetings late, guys not showing up to player only meetings at all. There's a lot that goes into it. Do we have to make this mandatory? Do we have to make this mandatory? Like it's to hear that, like, again, you talk about player only meetings in the NFL. Usually when you start to hear a team talk about player only meetings, shit is going horrifically wrong for that team. Now, I'm sure, every single team has maybe like a once a week type thing of where it's a players only meeting, whether it's the best team in the league or whether it's the worst team in the NFL. We only ever hear about teams having player only meetings when things are going bad. But if players are just not showing up to that or showing up late, like, that to me is one of those things where if you're Mike McDaniel, you can't really control that because they're player only meetings. But just like that culture has been fostered and nurtured by the head coach, and it just shows that the leaders on that Dolphins team aren't getting on these guys enough, because it's kind of like when we're at work and it's one of those things where we're looking at our management screwing things up and we're just like, I'm not going to help because why should I help in this instance? Because we've kind of lost faith in the leadership. And that's kind of what this ultimately feels like. It's just like the players on the team are like, why? Like, why do I even care? Like, it's not my problem. I'm going out and doing my thing.
Mm-hmm. And really, this is kind of what I said about the Miami Dolphins at the start of the season, because I did not like what I saw from this team, and I just felt like it was starting to fall apart and implode. And it very much was, almost like Tyreek Hill was that last little bit of glue holding things together just because of his talent level. Once he was done for the season and the Dolphins announced, yeah, we're not even going to bring him back, at that point, I think a lot of guys around that Miami Dolphins locker room are looking at it going, I want out. Like,
yeah.
We keep losing. Like, nobody's on the same page here. I feel bad for some of those guys that are on that team, like Devon Achan and Minkah Fitzpatrick getting traded back there. I feel so bad for him. Like, that's rough. I wish that hadn't happened to him. I hope they find somewhere else to trade him to before the deadline so he can go and play some real football somewhere. But this Dolphins team, it's a powder keg that is ready to erupt, and it's gonna happen within the next couple weeks.
Yep.
Unless they pull out some big blowout win where it looks like the camaraderie is there and they all come together, which I don't think is going to happen, especially with Tua finally coming out and saying something like this. This team they're cooked.
Yeah.
And they're another one that they really should just start the fire sale. And I don't think Mike McDaniel is the head coach there next year. I don't know what happened, if Miami was just too much pressure for him, or he just wasn't getting the right players that he wanted, or maybe he's just one of those guys that isn't cut out to be a head coach. Maybe he's just better suited to be a play caller on a team and let somebody else run the actual disciplinary management style portion of the team.
Yeah, you know what's funny about that is Mike McDaniel wasn't ever the play caller with the 49ers, because that's where he came from. And that was always Kyle Shanahan, man. Like, he was the offensive coordinator, but he wasn't the play caller, and I would say Mike McDaniels has been one of those more successful guys at this role. And as much as I have liked Mike McDaniels throughout his tenure, and I thought he was a good spot for Miami, I think the fact that he had Tua as his quarterback, the fact that Tua just kept trying to be Cam Scatabo before Cam Scatabo got there and just headbutt everyone, the team wasn't all that great when he initially got there. There was a lot of things that I think ultimately kind of set him up to fail in a
Mhm.
sense, and now he's just kind of just riding it out. I think he knows it at this point where he's just like, yeah, it's probably going to happen. There's not much I can do about it. Again, this organization gave a guy that can't stay healthy for an entire year, mostly because he keeps trying to ram his head into things in the starting quarterback. We're kind of locked into that. Like, I can't walk out there and be like, hey, I want to draft a quarterback in the first round, because everyone's just going to look at me and be like, you have a quarterback, and his name is
Uh,
Tua, who we just paid $200 million to.
yep. Yeah, exactly. That like are you going to have another Kirk Cousins on your hand where you draft someone and then bench the $200 million quarterback? I think more likely they're going to have to go out there and try to find a trade partner to move to a two, and they're going to have to retain some of that contract. Most teams are not going to want a guy with that sort of a concussion history, manning their backfield, because one hit and it's career over, depending on the hit. That's the tough thing. I don't know. The Dolphins are in a rough spot. Like
Yeah.
we were just talking about the Titans. At least the Titans are at the beginning stages of their rebuild. The Dolphins have not even detonated the bomb to consider cleaning up the rubble and start the rebuild. Like
Yeah.
they're still 5 steps behind where the Titans are. And it is going to be a rough ride for Dolphin fans for the next probably 5 years.
Well, here's the thing. Like, the Titans, they're at rock bottom. Like, the
Mhm.
Titans are at rock bottom right now. The problem with the Dolphins is they have a rope attached to their leg with an anchor sinking them to the bottom. And they're just sitting back going like, well, there's frankly nothing I can really do in this moment, so I'm just here for the ride. And yeah, when we talk about guys that they could potentially look to trade away, Devon Achan is someone who I think is a likely candidate to be traded away. Jalen Waddle,
Mhm.
I don't think Jalen Waddle would get traded away, but they might consider that avenue. I've heard a lot of talk about Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips on the defensive side of the ball. Those two edge rushers there. Again, they have Chop Robinson, who is a second-year player at the edge rushing spot, who they're really excited about. But yeah, you bring up a good point with Minkah Fitzpatrick. So there are 4 or 5 guys that are on this Miami Dolphins roster here at the moment that you could look at and you go like, yep, like, if you have the opportunity to acquire a bunch of picks. Now, I don't think any single one of these guys is going to garner a first round pick, but there's nothing to say that Devon Achane won't garner you a second or a third round pick, because he's still a talented young running back. There's nothing to
Mhm.
say that, hell, even Jalen Waddle, maybe not the trade deadline, but at the end of the year, I know you and I have talked a lot about DJ Moore being someone that could be moved on from. Why wouldn't we see the Patriots potentially try to go out and draft a guy or trade for a guy like Jalen Waddle? And
Mhm.
maybe even the Steelers look at this Dolphins team and say, hey, let's try to ultimately get that deal done. There's so many things you can do. The 49ers are looking for edge rushers, so I'd expect either Jalen Phillips or Bradley Chubb to make their way over on that side. Even the Bears could potentially be looking at one of those guys. Minkah Fitzpatrick. You get to the trade deadline and it's a team that has a really good defense. They're just kind of missing some of that leadership. It's going, hey, we'll give you a 4th round pick for Minka, because chances are at this point you're probably not going to get too much more for him at this stage of his career, especially with that contract. And if you're
Mhm.
Miami, you're just kind of sitting back going like, we're going to be holding a lot of money from these contracts, but we're going to be getting some picks to hopefully try to speed run this kind of sinking of the ship, and then hopefully being able to swim back up, and that's kind of
Yep.
what they need to do.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, like I look at that Miami team, and you mentioned Chop Robinson. They've got Ollie Gordon at the running back position. Both are young guys, young talented guys that you can keep to have that kickstart of rebuild. You got guys at key positions already. You can just fill around them. And so yeah, moving on from like Achan, Jalen Waddle, I could see getting traded. The toughest thing about Minkah Fitzpatrick is I think the biggest suitor we're gonna see for a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick is a division rival in the Buffalo Bills, wanting a guy to really solidify that secondary for them. And so that'll be a tough pill to swallow. Are they willing to let Fitzpatrick go to a rival and have to face him a couple times a year over the next couple of years?
Yeah,
So
I don't think that's necessarily as big of a deal, just because it's one of those things of going, we would hate to see him, but
mhm.
it's not like we've had him. It's not like one of these guys where it's been like, oh, he's been here for the last 7 years. And like, it would be more of a painful thing for, like, let's say if the Dolphins trade him to the Ravens, for instance, for you, because Minka Fitzpatrick is someone who is notorious for being a Pittsburgh Steeler. And if he goes to the Baltimore Ravens, I think that would be a tougher pill for you to swallow, as opposed to, him going to the Bills, Jets, or Patriots.
Yeah.
But speaking of another team that we thought was going to be all but hopeless this year, was the New York Giants. And yeah, they're 2-4, but in their last 3 games, they're 2-1, and they're probably one of the most entertaining teams in football to watch right now.
Yeah, they're an exciting team to watch. It's really disappointing that Malik Neighbors went out the way he did, in fact, because like I just imagine having Neighbors there alongside guys like Jackson
Jackson Dart, Cam Scatterbo.
Gabriel and Abdul Carter. Like these guys are just they're bringing in a new life to the Giants. I can't remember who I saw saying it, but it was put so well that this Giants team, it felt like they were just resigned to losing. Like the players, they were going and going, we know we're going to lose this game. And so the effort level wasn't there and they would lose and it was boring to watch. These 3 guys came in and we haven't seen as much of Abdul Carter yet, but we will. But Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterbo, they came in here and they're like, no, we play to win. Like, I don't care if I was in college last year. I'm here to win. And they're making it exciting and they're putting everything on the line out there. And they're shifting the mentality in this locker room to where it's, man, we do stand a chance. We beat the Eagles. Like, we can do this. We can win some games. And it's making for some exciting football for fans around the league, as long as you're not a rival NFC East fan. I'm sure they're all a little bit worried. But it's making for good football, man, and I'm enjoying watching it. Like I'm impressed with what they've been able to do thus far. Is it a long-term solution? No, I don't think so. It's just saving Brian Daboll's job for now. With how balls to the wall those 2 guys play, I have a feeling they're both going to have fairly short careers as a result, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch in the time they're there.
Yeah, I think the excitement with Jackson Dart is for real. Again, when I talked about Jackson Dart, I said he was my 3rd quarterback in that class last year. I was pretty confident in what Jackson Dart could be as an NFL quarterback. I think I was maybe a little bit above the trend of saying he was a 1st round pick, because I know even prior to even the combine, I was going like, this guy is a 1st round pick, guys. Like, and people are like, nah, like he's a second round guy. I'm like, no, he's one of those guys. Like, he's not a top 10 guy, not by any stretch of the imagination, but he could be something. But him and Cam have just built this such a level of broship and a bromance, essentially, where you see it when they go out there. They're playing with fun, they're playing with swagger, they're playing with confidence.
Yep.
And this is a team that, on the offensive side of the ball, at least, frankly, just isn't that good. Again, like with Neighbors out, their top receiver is Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt. They have Theo Johnson, who is, I think, a 2nd-year tight end in the NFL. He might be in his rookie season. 2nd year in the NFL. So, it's not like you have elite players. You have Andrew Thomas as your starting left tackle. He's really, really good. So, you're still looking at the rest of this O-line going, we can still improve it here. Like we're not exactly finished in this department. But then you look at the defensive side, it's like, okay, you got some players on that defensive line that's really making things good. And Tyler Nubbin is performing really, really good as a safety. Javon Holland coming over from Miami is proving to be a great pickup by them. But yeah, man, it's this Giants team is giving people reasons to be excited to watch Giants football.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, hopefully Brian Dable pumps the brakes a little bit though, because he's gotten himself and this team in a little bit of hot water and a little bit of trouble after that Thursday night game. They are under investigation over how quickly Jackson Dart was in and out of concussion protocol. They have had to send out reminders to the rest of the league going, hey guys, you can't expedite this process. You have to go through those steps or fines will start to be given. And there is rumors already going around that the Giants may lose a draft pick next year over this infraction that they committed. Because it was like, there's no way he went through all of the concussion protocol in the 2 plays that Russell Wilson played. Just because the fans were losing their mind and booing because he was so terrible. I still don't understand why. Like, just stop dressing Russell Wilson. Dress Jameis Winston. Put Jameis out there if something like this happens again. Because at least he will give the fans something to cheer for. Fans around the league right now, they're just looking for a reason to boo Russell Wilson. And honestly, the Giants need to just get him out of the facility because it is not going well. And it's causing Brian Dable to make mental errors that is going to cost this team down the road. That is the biggest thing. Like losing a draft pick when you've got some fiery talent on both sides of the ball right now. One good draft for the Giants, they could be competitive in this division because, yeah, they don't have much at wide receiver until Malik Neighbors comes back. You got Neighbors, you got Cam Scatterbo, you got Tyrone Tracy Jr., who also is a good running back. Jackson Dart is proving well. As we discussed, the defense is phenomenal. One really good draft with another wide receiver, maybe a tight end, couple of offensive linemen, and a good free agency. This Giants team could be looking at the division and going, we can compete with both Washington and Philadelphia now.
Yeah, it really is. It really is that. Like you're one draft away from being able to compete with some of the top dogs in this division. And hell, they just beat the top dog in that division. These Super Bowl champions, they made them look bad. And that's now the team that I do want to talk about here is because you and I, while we're at work, often we'll talk football while we're doing stuff. And after this game, we just kind of stopped and looked at each other and we went, we've been saying it all season long. If the Eagles play football, they are the best team in the NFL. The problem is they only do that for 1/4 of a game, it seems like, which is 100% coaching, which means that your coaching staff isn't getting your guys prepared enough to mentally go play a full 60 minutes. Like hell, when I'm talking with coaches prior to calling games for myself, or when I'm doing that, I'm often listening to coaches say, you know what, in our last game, we didn't play a full 60 minutes, whether it's hockey, whether it's football, whether it's basketball, or whatever sport it is. You hear them say, like, it doesn't need to just be minutes. It's just like, well, we didn't play that. And it's, as long as we can just get our guys focused and playing for that full amount of time that we need to do, we can go out there and compete with a bunch of good teams. And the Eagles, again, your people are saying to me that we've made the joke of Jalen Hurts isn't that good of a quarterback, and he's not proving to be one this year. But this is the same guy that in the 2 Super Bowls that he's played, he has not only been the best player on the field in both of those games, but he has looked like a top 5 quarterback, not just from his rushing ability, but from his passing ability as well. In the biggest stages in the NFL. And I've never once said Jalen Hurts is an elite passing quarterback, because I'd be lying at that point. But you don't need to be an elite passing quarterback if you have all the extra stuff in your game like Jalen Hurts does, and with a super team around you to win a Super Bowl. Hell, they just did it last year. But
Yeah.
like the difference between this year and last year is so dramatic. And again, this brings me back to the point of having an offensive minded head coach who calls the plays, because guess what? If you have that guy year over year, things aren't going to change. Whereas that OC from last year, he's the head coach of New Orleans.
Yep. Yeah, that is definitely hurting them, and you can see it because I even said that, like, the Eagles look beatable now, and the key is neutralize their run game and make Jalen Hurts have to throw it a bunch, because whatever they're doing in the play calling and the scheme and the preparation is not there. These guys are not getting open, which is crazy because you got AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, who
Yeah.
both were very good at getting open under Kellen Moore. So it's clearly the play calling that's going on there. Dallas Goedert is still great, but we knew that with this OC. I can't remember his name, but I knew coming in he's kind of a tight end merchant. He loves his tight ends. And so that's where I knew Dallas Goedert was going to have himself a bit of a year, but I was very worried about the wide receivers, and we're seeing that is exactly what is happening. The wideouts are not getting the targets, they're not getting clean looks, and they're just not succeeding as a result. And some of that, a lot of that is down to the preparation, because even that play right near the end of the game where we saw Jalen Hurts throw that pick for the long return, you look at that play and AJ Brown is wide open, 12 yards further down, and it's like in the end zone. It's
Yep.
like, why are you throwing the tough comeback instead of that crossing route that's a guaranteed touchdown for you? And that is purely preparation, where Jalen Hurts isn't used to going through all those progressions. He's rushing it, he's forcing plays. I know that was only his first interception in like 12 or 14 games, but with the way things are going, we might be seeing more and more of that start to come to be. And the Eagles, they might have screwed themselves in this game against the Giants as well, in terms of that tush push, because there was a segment where they ran 4 tush pushes in a row, which was incredibly boring to watch, and where they false started and didn't get flagged on all 4 of them. And that is where the big discussion and debate is coming in on this play now, is why are they getting away with false start after false start after false start? And that is where this play is going to get obliterated, because if the referees can't get that under control, they can't find some way to start to call that, then we're going to see a majority of owners next year that go, yeah, we want it out because it is not being officiated properly. That is the problem now. Yes, it's an impressive play when they run it properly. I'd say 9 times out of 10 this season, they have not run it properly because they're false starting on every single snap.
Yeah, I've been a stout defender of saying I don't think the tush push should be banned. It's a
No.
football play, and just because one team runs it better than anyone else doesn't mean it should be banned. But like, I'm listening to people talk about this, and it's going like, you can't officiate it properly. Like, I sit back and I go, it's hard for me to continue to say and agree with some of these things, just because you just look at it and you go like, man, like, I've always looked at it and been like, it's your 4th and 1, 4th and 2 type situation, and you're getting this drive and you want to keep this going, like, or you're trying to get that touchdown, like, boom, you use this one. But the fact that they like what you're saying, they used it 4 plays in a row, which I just look at and I go, if you want to play rugby, go play rugby.
Yeah.
But, and yes, that play is based off of a rugby play. At the same time, it's fine if it's 3-4 times a game to try to get that little bit extra. It's kind of like a gimmick. You know, it's a really good gimmick that works, but you're not using that gimmick every single play. And I've always said, I'm like, if we get to that point of where we're seeing the Eagles use it 10 times a game of where we're seeing it multiple times run in a row. Like I understand it if the play is called and it's like, okay, one team or the opposing team gets a penalty like what we saw in the Commanders game last year, where it's just like penalty after penalty. It's like, okay, I get they're gonna run that, like that's fine. But if the officials aren't calling the offsides or any of the other stuff that's happening with it, I just throw my hands up and go like, okay, I get it. Like if you want to get this one removed, get it removed. It's annoying, but I get it.
Yeah, see, and I'm still not an advocate for it being removed. This is something that the league needs to look at, and they need to find a way to educate these refs to ensure it is getting officiated properly. I don't know if maybe this is one of those plays where they go, okay, well, because of the play that is being lined up right now, we have to align ourselves differently, and we literally have a lineman that is 5 yards off the play, but right down that line and watching, and it slightest hint of movement, you're flagging them.
Yep.
Because that's where the issue is if they had run it 4 times in a row, but it was clean all 4, then it's like, yeah, this is still a case of, well, we're just better at it than you. It was a goal line play. We didn't quite get the 4 yards each time. We got 1 and 1 and 1. Like, and it worked. But they were false starts on each one that were not called. That is where the problem comes in. It's officiating that's the issue. And so that's what the league really should do, is find a way to ensure this is being officiated properly, as opposed to banning the play outright. You know, maybe it comes down to a lot of these O linemen wear gloves. And so maybe it's a matter of putting a chip in those gloves now too, to see if those are moving past the line of scrimmage before the ball is, you know, that they're using that chip technology for first down markers as it is. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know the solution outside of just teaching these referees a little bit more and aligning them differently on that specific play. But again, the Eagles have made that difficult because now they've got a fake tush push in the market where, you know, then the running back bootlegs out. And it's like, okay, now we can't have the ref there because he's in the way. They got to figure something out, though, because 4 false starts in a row uncalled, it's starting to feel like we're watching the Kansas City Chiefs 2.0.
Yeah. And as you well know, I don't think any ref gives a certain amount of treatment just to any single team. I just think there's good refs and there's bad refs. And unfortunately in the NFL, there's a lot of really bad refs. But that, you know, I've also said with it, referees should be full-time employees. They should have to obviously they have to travel every single week and they have to chat with teams pretty much kind of like broadcasters, but at the same point they should be in a facility every single week of where it's okay, this is stuff that we're going over, and they should almost be doing like game film sessions with all of these guys and making it a 40-hour per week job. And so again, referees are human. They're never going to get everything perfect. They're never going to have everything 100%. And frankly, I don't want them to be 100% because then it's just robots every single time of where it's just like boom, boom, boom. Because I know everyone wants to be like, oh, we need to get the refs out of the game. And I know when talking with people, like, and speaking about a little bit of baseball here, again, Worlds, or not the World Series, but the playoffs are on. People are saying like, when are we gonna get these all like robot umps that are never gonna miss a call? And I go, you know, and someone was saying to me, I can't remember if it was someone at like we were working with or someone else, but it was you know, I kind of like the little bit of randomness that it comes with it, as long as it's not egregious where it's like it's slightly outside that it's called a strike, or it's slightly inside and it calls a ball. It's just kind of that little bit of something there. Again, it's trying to take out some of the egregious stuff that is ultimately the deciding factor. And I looked at that and I went, yeah, I kind of agree with that. Like, you don't want everything to be perfection. So again, you're saying the chips in the gloves for an offensive lineman. Maybe all he's doing is he's just has a little bit of a shift of his hand. It's like, oh, boom, a flag. And it's like, well, son of a bitch. Like, I didn't false start. It was literally just the ground is wet and my hand went from here to there. And it's like, oh, well, the chip detected that. And so it's clearly now it's over the line. And But I think that it's just simple. Make the NFL refs full time. Put them in a facility, for 2-3 days a week during that time period. Doesn't even need to be a facility. It could just be all through Zoom and that kind of stuff at their home. Get them
Exactly.
to watch film of the teams that they're, you know, officiating during this week, and yeah, yeah,
100%. Yeah, education is the solution for sure. Unionizing and employing those refs on a more of a full-time basis. It doesn't even have to be 40 hours a week. Like you said, Zoom meetings, watching game film on the teams you're going to be officiating in the upcoming weekend, and then having sessions where it's like, okay, these were egregious calls or egregious miscalls that we saw in the last week. We're not calling anybody out, but we want everybody to look at this and see where the mistake was made and ensure that you're knowledgeable enough that you go, okay, maybe I don't make this mistake next time. That's all it is. It's just finding ways to make sure these guys are better trained. Because going back to the baseball, I completely agree with, at the very least, the strike zone being fully automated, because we see far too much of the egregious calls, like 3 fastball balls right down the middle, all called balls. It's like, man, just can we eject that ump at that point?
yeah.
I think keeping the line judges in to determine whether a check swing was committed or not, like things like that, I think all should stay. But that behind the plate umpire, other than being there to ensure there is not any derogatory sort of just crude comments being made between the catcher and the batter, because that does happen. You're basically just there policing rather than calling the actual pitches. And yeah, in the NFL, we need better trained referees. And the way to do that is to employ them on more of a full-time basis.
Yeah. Obviously, there could be so many different things we could throw out there for ideas with that. We've kind of gone through this entire podcast, funny enough, not speaking about either of our teams whatsoever. And
Mhm.
obviously the Steelers went out there and played this weekend against the Cleveland Browns, and I was at work, so I was only able to kind of watch moments of that game. But even the moments that I saw, like, you and I obviously were texting throughout the game, and I remember at one point reading a text of going, "Son of a bitch, the Steelers defense is pissing me off. We could have had 5 interceptions, but they all dropped
Yeah.
the ball." And it's like, God damn.
Yeah, I mean that is frustrating. Like, it was still a really good game for the defense. That's one of those situations where it's like, okay, it might be a good week to run the tip drill. Maybe those guys were just a little soft on that because they just came off the bye week, so that their awareness wasn't quite there. I mean, something to note too, the field conditions in Pittsburgh yesterday were very, very bad. Like that field has been torn up. Pitt plays there, and they played at several home games recently. The Steelers have played several home games. They are resodding that field this week because both of those teams are on the road over the next couple of weeks. And so that gives the opportunity for it to be torn up, resodded, and set. So that will be good going forward. And so I do wonder if a little bit of that was just slight slips and just not sure footing, which makes it hard to focus on what your hands are doing when you're focusing on not breaking an ankle,
Yeah, or
slipping on
tearing
that
your
on that grass.
ACL.
Because it was getting very sandy all up the middle of the field. And really that could be why Dylan Gabriel was throwing some bad passes as well. Both of those. So bad passes thrown, bad attempts at interceptions. I think a lot of those guys are going to beat themselves up. It's a short week for Pittsburgh, so you're not going to be doing a lot of physical drills this week anyway. And you're going up against a quarterback on Thursday night in Joe Flacco with the Bengals that is kind of notorious for throwing interceptions lately. And so really a tip drill is not going to be very physical. It's something you can run through on Tuesday afternoon that might just help bring that confidence back, because I feel like that might have been a bit of a confidence shaker for some of these guys dropping those passes. That this defense would have just been balls to the wall if they had gotten even half of those. If they had gotten just 2 of those, this game would have been even further blowout than it already was. But really, dropped interceptions happen a lot. It's not like dropped passes where that's kind of your job as a
Yeah.
wide receiver. You're supposed to
Catch the
it.
ball.
As a cornerback, your job is not necessarily to catch it. It's more to just make sure it's not caught by someone else. So that was more just me being the defensive juggernaut that I am, where I'm like, fucking squeeze the ball.
Catch
You
the
know,
goddamn
come
ball.
on, you guys. Come down with that. So it was frustrating, but at the same time, I'm happy to see that they're still getting in those passing lanes. Obviously, if they're knocking these balls down and able to come close to the interceptions, that'll come with time. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of these secondaries, they're dealing with some injury issues too. We saw Joey Porter Jr. twice throughout the game laying on the ground, and I'm like, oh, you just came back. You've only played one game this year. What are you doing? You know, Darius Slay went out at one point. Jalen Ramsey, you know, reached down for that hamstring again at one point. So the secondary is dealing with some injuries, some just minor nagging, lingering issues. This short week's not going to benefit them. So they need to just play smart this coming week and then rest up going into the next game after that.
Yeah, obviously for my team, Bears are playing tonight up against the Washington Commanders. Unfortunately, we weren't able to give the game prediction videos this week. There's just not a moment where we were able to do it, and so we're not really going to go through a game prediction video this week. I don't think the Bears are going to win this game. I think, again, like I've said before with this team, I need to be proven at this point that I can put faith in this organization, just because it seems like every single time that I have, it's just gone back to bite me in the ass. And, you know, I said the Cowboys were going to win that game. I said the Bears were going to beat the Raiders and they almost lost it. And, you know, they had to have a blocked field goal at the end of the game. And I'm interested to see how Tyreek Stevenson is going to play in this game, because obviously if you go back to last year, reason the Commanders won that game was because Tyreek Stevenson, you know, decided to be a dipshit. And like I said to you at work this week, I think if Tyreek Stevenson can ultimately go out there and have a really, really, really good game and put all of that behind him, he could very easily have a Pro Bowl style year this year. And, you know, I said after his rookie season, I'm like, man, Tyreek Stevenson is going on this trajectory of being a number one corner for most of the teams in the NFL. It's just the problem is he has one of, if not the very best corner in the NFL on the opposite side of him in Jalen Johnson. And in year number 2, I'm like, this is great. We have these two guys. And it started out really, really good. And then after that moment, it was just complete and utter chaos. So, you know, Tyreek Stevenson has gotten back to that level that I've wanted to see him at in these last 2 games. This is the test for me. If he goes out there and proves this, then I'm all for it. I'm all for it, man. Like I'm here for the Tyreek Stevenson Pro Bowl season. Whether he'll get it or not, we'll still have to see, because it's still fairly early in the year. But if he struggles in this game, man, I'm gonna be like I said to you. I think he's one of those guys that's gonna be a good corner in the league. He might even have a season where he's a great corner, but he's never going to be one of those elite corners in the NFL, just because he can't get out of his own way. It's similar to what I said similar to what I said to you about Joey Porter Jr. Whether it's he is a good corner that can play great football, but I don't think he's ever going to be elite, just because there's just something in his game where I just watch him and go, it's just not there. And you said it's a confidence thing, which if it's a confidence thing, you just have to hope that he can get to that level. But yeah, we'll definitely see with a lot of this.
Right. Yeah, and I mean that's a wild thing too, considering, you know, Joey Porter Jr. has not given up a man-to-man touchdown since I think week 2 of 2023.
Yeah.
And so like that just goes to show how good you have to be considered elite. This game though, it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be rough on both sides, you know, because the Commanders are going through it right now. They're missing a lot. You know, Jaden Daniels still questionable. I do think he's gonna play.
He is playing today.
But Noah Brown is out. That's a wide receiver 3 for them. Terry McLaurin is out, wide receiver 1. Deebo Samuel is questionable. He only had a partial practice once this week. He's dealing with a heel issue. So even if he does play, he's not at 100%. And so it's going to be a tough game for the Commanders on the offensive side of the ball as well. And we know the Commanders don't have a great defense. So this could be a great opportunity for Ben Johnson to build some confidence in the offense for the Chicago Bears. I know we talked a lot about Tyreek Stevenson and the defense and what they're going to be able to do. We might see some fun stuff out of Caleb Williams and Romo Dunze and DJ Moore. Maybe DJ Moore finally gets going this week. Like it's going to be an interesting game to watch because this is kind of a get right game for the Bears offense to be able to just settle down and become more consistent. And this is sort of a just survival game for Washington. Like they're looking at this going, we got to win this and we got to do it with as few injuries or dramatic issues as possible. And so I expect to see a lot of clock management, time management on the Washington side of the ball, while Ben Johnson is likely just trying to shovel that football down the Washington defense's throat as much as he can and go, look, we're not managing the clock. We're managing touchdowns is what we want to do. And I think that's what the Bears have to do. They have to play very aggressive on the offensive side of the ball tonight and just let their defense just go with the flow of what the Commanders are trying to do and just try to slow them down.
Yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting. I'm sure I'm going to be frustrated with a lot of moments in these games. But there's so much trade talk that we could talk about. I think our next week's podcast is going to be pretty trade heavy. So make sure to tune in next week for that because I'm sure that's going to be a really fun and exciting episode. So make sure to stick around with that. We don't have anything for this or that this week. Again, it was a little bit of one of those awkward kind of weeks of where we could only record it at this point of this week. And so, some of the other scheduled stuff, but I don't know if you have anything else that you want to add for today.
I mean, more just to sort of let people know, anybody watching, like, we are entering that sort of busy time of year. Unfortunately, we had this issue last season where you often are calling games throughout the weekend, which makes it tough for us to link up. And there are a lot of labor issues going on around where we live, where our work schedule is much increased. We're working a lot of hours right now, and so it is making it tough for us to even find times during the week to do quick little recording sessions. So we may run into some situations over the coming 6 weeks where we might miss a week here or a week there. Just sort of bear with us. We will be back, and we'll likely have a longer podcast the following week when that happens, just because we like to catch up on everything. So we will still be here, even if we happen to miss a week here or there. So just bear with us and, keep coming back, having fun with us, chatting with us.
Yeah, don't forget, bear down. But that's it for this one, guys. For Sterling, I'm Brendan saying thank you all very much for watching. Peace.